Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Family and Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is today, Thursday, the 2nd of November 2023. If I can start the meeting, first of all, by taking any apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, I've received them from Councillors Fellis Aiken, Renner Thompson and Councillor Waddle, and Lynn Houghton and Alan Hodgson.
Thank you very much. I'll just take this opportunity as well to welcome Councillor Eve Chicken as the new Vice Chair of the Scrutiny Committee. Eve, welcome, and I'm sure you'll find this a really very engaging Scrutiny Committee to be on. And again, thanks to Councillor Richard Dodd for his work over the past few years. We now move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. It's items of accuracy, pages 1 to 4. Does anyone have any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? I'm not seeing any comments, so on that basis, I will sign those off as a true and accurate record. So thank you very much for that. We're now moving on to disclosure of members' interests. We all have our published members' interests online. Is there anything which is in today's report which you haven't already disclosed on your published list of interests? I'm not seeing any indication. So on that basis, we will move on to the substantive part of the meeting, which is 2 reports. The first report, which is on pages 5 to 22 in your agenda packs, is Children's Social Care Quality of Practice Framework. And this is very much about the range and the depth and the breadth of the work that we do. This is going to be taken by Dorothy. Dorothy, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the Scrutiny Committee, and you can take the report.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Dorothy Chambers. My role is the Head of Quality Assurance in Children's Social Care, and I'm going to take you through the main aspects of why and what is in our Quality of Practice framework. So first off, I've been asked to come here. The purpose of my attendance is to highlight the main aspects of the Quality of Practice framework. I'm making an assumption that it was in the papers and that people have read it. So just a little bit of an overview. This document actually outlines and enables us to explore the quality of practice across children's social care by various mechanisms, and I'll go through those in brief because they are all in the report. As we will all know that we have KPIs, performance indicators, which tell us our numbers, but the main purpose of the quality of practice framework is looking at the length and breadth of what we do to reassure ourselves of the practice that happens in Northumberland, the services that children and families receive in Northumberland. But we also look at what we might do better, and we promote that learning cycle. We learn from all of our quality of practice activities, and we put plans in place to make sure that we improve in the areas that we need to improve. It would be great to say that we were perfect at everything, but we're talking about a real world. We do strive for excellence in Northumberland in everything that we do with children and families, and we'll learn from a various range of things. We need to have a framework because there are national, regional and statutory requirements, and this is how we capture it. The purpose of the framework is for everybody. It's not just for leaders, it's not just for managers, it's for all of our workforce to understand why we do what we do. And I'm going to try and work this down. Okay, so that's obviously just the picture on the front of the framework that you've already got. So we look at things through practice evaluation. We have monthly practice days in each part of our service where senior managers go out, look at practice, provide a report, feedback to the staff, and then feed up to our governance arrangements so that everybody knows the, where we are with regards to our practice. Obviously, we learn from inspection. You know, we get a grading from that, and we often get items where we need to look to improve. We put them into our continuous improvement plans. We do practice observations. We sometimes do peer challenges with other local authorities. Collaborative audits is a big part of our quality of practice activities, where we not only look at what's on children's records, we speak with workers, we also speak with parents and carers to gain their understanding of what it's like being part of a service that's offered from Northumberland. And that shapes service delivery sometimes, so we often learn from that feedback. We often learn from complaints and compliments, which reflects what we do in our service. We do standard audits, themed audits, and we also do multi-agency audits with the partnership, often based on the priorities or on areas where we think we might want a deeper look. As I said at the beginning, we do have KPIs, so we do have performance data and case management. We have dashboards. We have service monthly clinics where we look at our performance with regards to data, but we also look at the qualitative information that might balance out. So we might say that there's some issues with the data, but we may have done a deeper dive, which gives us a much wider and deeper understanding of our practice in Northumberland. We also have 3 monthly senior management performance reviews, where senior managers have to provide a report around the areas that are going well, the areas that might not be going so well, and any plans that might need to be put in place with regards to that. As I've already alluded to, we very much rely on feedback. We learn from complaints and compliments. We try to get children and family feedback. Families and children don't always want to talk to us about their experiences. You know, we have to accept that sometimes we intervene in very difficult situations, but we try to gain feedback to determine what, you know, whether we've done a good job, whether we need to improve anything. We also get feedback from staff. We have our annual questionnaire that goes out, and staff are often asked about feedback. We gain feedback from partner agencies, not only in some of our learning reviews, but some of our task and finish groups that are identified through the partnership. And we also have the Children and Young People's Forum. So from the top, so we see ourselves as leaders, so we need to make sure that the messages around quality of practice are right down to the grassroots level. So we include a lot of the stuff that we do, understanding in inductions. Our supervision process is robust, and we are able to challenge workers or compliment workers, which is recorded on their supervision records. Compliments then sometimes go into reports that I've already alluded to around quality of practice. We have our annual appraisal process, and we also have practice workshops across the service. Any learning that comes out of any quality of practice activity might bring about an action plan, which will then be taken into practice workshops, talk with the workers, and then we will monitor at a later date if we need to. So basically, that is the quality of practice. As I've already said, we do have governance arrangements and reports. Any findings are taken through various routes, sometimes just into our children's social care, if it's a children's social care issue. Sometimes it's a partnership issue and it goes to the relevant meetings. Yeah, so any questions, please?
Thank you for that, Dorothy. So I'll open this up to the floor for any questions. We've got two purposes in receiving this report. One is to look for identification of scrutiny, challenge and clarification, and how we can be assured that what is happening is actually having an impact out there. So I've got Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. Just with regards to the report, it says on the front that it was signed off in March and it's under review from September. So if it's under review already, has there been any changes put in? And I'm just wondering as well, with regards to them national KPIs, does this report basically just a tick box kind of the base level, or because I'm expecting that we're aiming a lot higher than that, because to be fair, sometimes the minimum standard shocks me at how low it actually is, and I would hope and expect, and I know where where I would like it to be.
So with regards to the review has happened. There's been minor changes, but nothing significant that's changed from the first version. This really, KPIs is mentioned in there, but it's about the wideness of practice as opposed to focusing in on the KPIs. I'm not saying that we don't, look at them, because we do. I think the self-assessment that Graham is going to go on to discuss will be able to give a bit more detail around those KPIs. But the whole purpose of this is to look at the KPIs alongside the quality of the work that happens. And we look at those alongside each other in order to understand the impact on children and young people and their families in Northumberland. And the numbers are very scientific, but we believe that it's about looking beyond the numbers sometimes. I hope that answers your question.
Graham and Audrey, is there anything you want to add to that?
I think for me, just to reinforce what Dorothy said, the point of bringing this here is to assure members and take challenge about the range of ways in which we understand the quality and impact of our practice, of which data is one key part, but really that's the starting point. So if we look at trends, for example, and I'll give some examples when I do the social care assessment, if we see trends going certain ways, we want to understand the why and the quality of what we do. And that will then lead us into more qualitative understanding of particular areas as opposed to just the KPIs. And so what Dorothy's done, what we've evolved here over the years, is a range of methods of understanding how and what we do. And it's in the context of being a learning organisation. We never wholly crack this. We can always do things better. And that's the point of what we do. The continuous improvement is the point of the framework.
Thank you, Chair. I think just really important to see the model that's operated in Northumberland is held in high regard, and Graham has developed that over time and continues to develop. I mean, clearly you've seen there's a review that's routinely considered, and I would say it's done on the basis of we always want to be doing more, do better. It's about having a high bar of challenge, and without doubt this quality of practice framework does that within children's social care.
Paul Rickard.
I'm just wondering who collates the feedback other than our own organisation? So obviously Ofsted are going to have an eye on this, but is there anyone else who you bring in between to listen to the staff, to listen to those who the service works with? Just kind of interesting to hear that level of how, if not, could that be done? Is that another way? Because sometimes when you're part of the organisation, being totally honest is hard, isn't it? If we're being completely candid about it.
Yeah, I guess I am part of the organisation, but my role is very unique and it works across all of the service. And I take an objective view, and I'm not saying it's just about one person. We sometimes bring in partner agencies to assist us with anything that we might be looking at, because we're very aware that we work for the organisation and sometimes you see what you see. Sometimes it takes a different line of questioning to better understand. So we do sometimes bring in partner agencies, to assist us in that process.
Audrey, I think you wanted to add something as well.
Just to add that Dorothy's been heavily involved in quality assurance for some while, but is one of our new heads of service in a brand new role for children's that is objectively removed from the teams in children's social care, although within the wider team overall, and will not only take the lead on the children's social care quality assurance, but will also pick up a new aspect of SEND quality assurance as well. But sits, I'm going to say, right in the middle to be away from the team so that Dorothy isn't, it sounds awful to say not affiliated, but does have that kind of separation.
I think, Chair, sorry, that's what I was getting at in terms of does Dorothy have access to others who can kind of give that opinion, such as the partners, but also that independent take on things, so that's really useful. Thank you.
Graham, you wanted to add something?
Just a bit more work on that, and our work is always strengthened and needs to be undertaken in partnership, and there is a piece of work just being driven by the Children and People Strategic Partnership where we're actually mapping the range of ways which we are participating, engaging with and getting feedback from children and young people. And there are a lot of them across the partnership in different forums for different reasons. But we are looking at ways in which we can combine and maximise and facilitate the use of that and those forums. And I think for some children and young people, sometimes, for example, they get a bit surveyed or over-surveyed and had enough of them. So we've got to find a range of ways in which we do it and engage effectively with children and young people particularly, but also their families. And we're doing that through the partnership as well as within just social care.
Reverend Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. Often looking through a report, you can often see the odd key phrase I find that's important, which is often underlying a lot of what's going on. I was particularly encouraged by paragraph 7.3 on page 13, where it talked about relationship-based practice and how important I believe that is in the whole concept. So it was good reading that. And the other point I would like just to make is that further through the report in paragraph 1.2, school attendance is mentioned. We know this is a national issue, but I think it's something that, even though it's a national issue, I think we've got to try and see if we can do something in this context to get school attendance. But I don't know whether there's any thoughts or observations on those.
I can cover off, probably I'll touch on the school attendance in my presentation about the self-assessment. I'm sure Audrey and I can give more broad feedback on that as necessary, if that's okay. So I'll cover that when I do my presentation for the next agenda item.
Councillor Seymour. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just some clarification really on the regular feedback that you receive from the families and of the quality of service that they receive. I'm just wondering how this is done, and also, you know, what's the amount of compliments or complaints that you receive on this?
So we work with regards to compliments, we work very closely with our client relations department here, and we have regular attendance from the manager who attends our quality of practice meeting. I couldn't give you the numbers here and there, but we do report on the numbers. But it is about the learning. We do get quite a lot of compliments through, and we try to weave that into anything that we might feedback to staff or in any reports. With regards to feedback from families, it is a constant in our work. Even if the families don't want to give feedback, we have mechanisms for children and young people, like our Momo app. I know that our NAS service has some really good questionnaires, and we have them across the service. So at any juncture of working with a family, we can ask for feedback from them. Whether they consent to it or whether they agree to it is up to them. We have just recently been part of a Children's Voices project, which was joint with North Tyneside, whereby we were gaining more feedback on a tablet. And that seemed to work well, although there may have been some technical issues sometimes. And we are currently looking at how we might better we get a bigger number of feedback from families and the technology that might assist us with that.
And actually, timely question, because on your work programme, you'll see that in December we have a report which is the complaints annual report. I hope it's compliments and complaints, yeah? Just rather than focus on all the negatives. Yeah, but that is coming to us in December, so that'll be a really good opportunity to do a deep dive into the feedback. So quite a good question. Are there any other comments, observations? I've got a couple myself, if you indulge me. There's two things. First of all, if you look at the infographic on the bottom of page 12, you'll see that journey from before 2018 to 2022, because certainly around 2015, 2016, there were some identified opportunities to improve within the council, I think is probably the best way of describing it. And what that does show is it does take a little bit of time to embed things. So what I'm just curious about is, and it comes to the second part of the question, which is on 7 model of practice, it says that the chosen model that we adopted was signs of safety. So how long did it take to embed that culture change? And what other options were there other than signs of safety, and why was that chosen?
The signs of safety is an internationally recognised framework for working and engaging, particularly through relationship-based practice with children, young people and their families. And that was the chosen model. We've had that for a number of years here in Northumberland. But if you're going to use it effectively, you've absolutely got to commit to it and make the most of it. And if I refer back to my previous experience, I previously was an Ofsted inspector before joining Northumberland, and would inspect authorities which said they used the signs of safety but didn't use it thoroughly or consistently, and only used aspects of that, and it didn't impact on the quality of their work or the consistency of their work. So the approach we've taken in Northumberland in rebooting and revisiting it, because I think it is an effective and nationally and internationally recognised practice framework, that we have absolutely committed to doing it and implementing it systematically across all of our services in terms of an approach. Now, we've got to have some flexibility with that to make sure it does work for us in Northumberland, but actually some of the key elements of it have to be embedded in the practice. And the culture of continuing to embed that is ongoing. It will never reach an end point where we're happy with it, because it has got to continue evolving in terms of how we do it. But I think we have got to a good place with it being firmly embedded, recognised in practice, and the key element of it is just taking is the relationship-based practice. If we're going to be effective in any social care work, it's got to be based on the relationships that we work with between ourselves as partners, but most particularly with children, young people and their families, because that's what is engaging. Any research will say that's what's going to make the difference in terms of how you engage and work with, not to do to. Particularly at the heavier end of work, where some of our more difficult and statutory interventions come into place. If we're going to be effective there, we've got to work with too. And this framework gives us a way of doing it consistently across all of our practitioners. So we may get, before that, you might get an individual practitioner who will be very good at working with families, but you might get somebody in the next team who doesn't do it and does it differently. And what it has given us is a consistency of practice across not just social work, across our family help and other ways of supporting, and in terms of how we look at work at a senior level. Some of the key elements and principles of it are now well embedded. But we've got to keep working on it and keep embedding it and keep reinforcing it. But it's in the context of us being, it's key about relationship-based practice and the culture that we want to develop and work with.
And I think often, when we're looking at processes like this, and, the boxes that you have to tick and all the hoops you've got to jump through, we forget that this has an impact on people's lives out there. And obviously that process that you're following is having an impact, and a very positive one. So I think it's, please pass on our thanks to staff. So 2 things we've been asked to do, I'm not seeing anyone else who wants to speak, is I think we've identified some areas there of clarification, and I think we're assured that the team are working well and they're doing what they're meant to do, and that it is having an impact for safeguarding young people in our communities. So on that basis, I'm happy to accept that report. So thank you very much for that, Dorothy. Much appreciated. We now move on to the second substantive report this morning, which is the Children's Social Care Annual Self-Assessment. In your pack, it's pages 23 to 66. And Graham, you're going to take that report for us.
Thank you, Chair. This is a big document, and I appreciate that. And I'm doing the presentation to try and cover off the key high-level aspects of it. But just to give you the background of this self-assessment, again, is a key element of our quality of practice framework. This is the way annually we will review the whole range of work that we've undertaken across children's social care and evaluate it in an analytical way and use that to develop our continuous improvement plan moving forward. Now, the self-assessment, the importance of this, apart from what we've got internally and how we use it, the report is required by Ofsted. It is probably the key document that Ofsted will look at when they come and inspect us, which is due any time now. So every Monday morning, if by midday, if we haven't had the call between Audrey and I, we know they're not coming this week. But I think that the importance of the breadth of the document, so we can demonstrate, and we don't do things for Ofsted, we do it because it's the right thing to do for us in terms of delivering our services. But what we have developed is this document and this process, not just to look at the performance indicators and the quality of practice, but the whole range of actions that we have to undertake strategically to keep developing the services that we offer for the benefit of children and young people. So the structure we've developed and evolved, and you will have read the detail of the document. We've identified what we've done well. This again is on a signs of safety principles. What have we done well in each of the sections? What could we have done better? There is an element of, the key element is the impact. Where we can evidence impact, the so what question. So we can talk all the stuff about all the actions we've taken, but if it's not making any difference, then what's the point? So each section where we can, we've identified the high level impacts that we have, and then what we've identified for each of the sections, what do we need to do to support continuous improvement? And those aspects will feed in, and I'll have a quick look at the end of the presentation, and they will inform our continuous improvement going forward. I will say that I think that the report does evidence, despite significant and ongoing challenges, particularly on workforce retention, particularly in social work, but also across residential care, issues with our placement sufficiency, enough placements for our cared for children, and increasing and complex demand, that despite those ongoing pressures, which aren't unique to us in Northumberland, these really are national challenges and issues, I think we can still evidence good progress, good quality of practice in the majority of areas that we're working in. But I'll take us through each of the areas now in terms of that. So the first element is strategic leadership, and not just looking at the quality of practice of what we do. We have got to have an eye to the future and looking at things that are going to be happening as well. But I'm just going to touch on some of the key elements of the developments that over the past year. So this is running from July 22 to July 23 broadly, but I will update where appropriately. So key element of our strategic leadership is a development around early help, family help and hubs. And again, we know that we are one of 14 family hub trailblazers nationally. We are making very good progress and respected well nationally for the progress that has been made in Northumberland. Since we did write this self-assessment, we have had a thematic review of our family hubs in Northumberland by CQC and Ofsted. They came for 2 days in August, one of 6 nationally, to inform future regulation for family hubs and family help, but also to see how we can contribute to that. The feedback we got from that, for the work we were doing, was really positive. There will be a report coming out this month, hopefully nationally, from CQC and Ofsted about where that goes in the future. The other element that we'd pick up on in terms of strategic developments is our early help education team. We've developed and put in place a team that works with schools, supporting them to identify support needs for the young people at an early stage and supporting them to undertake early help assessments, which is a holistic way of looking what a child's needs are and making sure we can get the support early in there. I'll give a bit more detail on how the impact of that when I go through the particular sections. Other strategic elements that we've got: corporate parenting, key priority for us and a principle for us, and you will hear all of us talking about this wherever we go in terms of the engagement across the council and partners to make sure that we take forward our responsibility corporately as corporate parents for our cared for children and our care leavers. So we've developed promises across the council, what they can offer for our young people. We've got an exemplary one from our, for example, from our fire and rescue service, which looks at the range of opportunities they can offer to our cared for young people, our care leavers, but also how they will help them, for example, in terms of independent living, supporting them to about fire awareness and other range of ways in which they can support our cared for children. Northumberland have signed up to a care leavers covenant, again, which is about us as a council, what we can offer to care leavers. In terms of corporate parenting, I'll probably touch on this again later. One of it we have eventually, and it has taken a long time to move forward, we have got a new children's home that has been built and is due to open in January in Pegswood and Pegsworth. But linked to that, and probably just coming out of the timescale for this, we've also got agreement to further develop satellite small bed units linked to our current homes, which we're making the most of changes in Ofsted registration, which will further increase our capacity and our flexibility. And again, I can come to that in more detail shortly. We've led regional work on the Care Leavers Covenant for the ICB, so they're offering opportunities for our care leavers. And also, strategically, we've been preparing for supported accommodation, which is now, as we speak, from the end of October now, subject to regulation inspection by Ofsted. So all the providers have had to register for that, and we've been supporting them to do that. But also we've tried to get a more flexible commissioning arrangement in place that we can move more quickly, because there is a challenge again in sufficiency around the volume of supported accommodation that is available for our young people. Strategic leadership of virtual school. I'll touch on this. There will be a virtual school annual report that is currently being written, which will come through in more detail to a future meeting, but we have made good progress on meeting our extended duty to promote the education of children with a social worker. The virtual school's primary statutory function is to support the education for cared for children, but over a year ago it extended that duty to include and promote the education of children with a social worker. And the model that we've developed to work with that has been looked at and seen as good practice by the Department for Education. And again, just touching on the attendance strategy, our virtual school is leading on the county's attendance strategy, but including in key elements of that is making sure we've got effective oversight of children missing education, how we can track them, make sure they're safeguarded, and what is being done to support them and make sure we support them back into education. In terms of SEND, again, strategic developments around, we have gained agreement to funding and are just initiating work to develop an in-house short break service. And we're talking about short breaks. That means support in the home. That might mean taking the young people out. That might mean time away. So it's a range of ways in which support can be offered. There is a challenge again in having sufficient providers who can offer that. And one of the reasons is because of that shortfall, we're developing an in-house provision to try and make sure that we can meet the need as identified. We've also implemented a resource plan to make sure we're more consistent and appropriate with the allocation of our resources there. So, again, on strategic leadership. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm very happy to take questions as I go through, because I've got to say there's a lot of information here, so if colleagues do have a question as we go through.
If you want to do it,
I'll just do that. I'll go.
So let's take
back.
some questions then. So, Councillor Watson.
Hi, Graham. Thanks, Chair. Just the bit on where it's impacting on the school attendance. I just wondered if you could just tell us a little bit more about the special schools, because obviously that is a concern if they're lower than the rates in the North East and nationally. Thank you.
So thank you for that. Our attendance in general is not back to the level it was pre-pandemic, but the team are working really hard. We have had a conversation with DFE this week, and we know the schools where we have real challenges. The attendance is lower in all of our schools, but I don't have special schools that are spiking in terms of that particular non-attendance. I can't explain enough or say enough around how much the team work with multi-agency to try and help children who are really challenged with school-based avoidance, not wanting to come into school, really anxious, and therefore brings in wider social work teams to be able to try and support that. Family hubs then become part of that network, as well as the inclusion team sat in education. So it really is a wide, strong approach to be able to try and improve that. We've got some really good successes in areas of the county, and we're trying to get that to replicate much more widely around the county and raise the level overall. I think it'll take us some while to get back to pre-pandemic.
I've got Councillor Chicken who's indicated she wants to speak, and then Paul Rickard. That's the one, yeah.
Hello. Just to go off the back of what Councillor Watson said there, with the attendance rate having dropped in all schools, as you say, when you're working with children, and particularly with parents, to establish why we've got that reduction, what is the main key factors that are coming back from parents as to why they can't get their children into school? It's a parent's responsibility to get their children into school, which means they're obviously struggling if they can't get that child into school. Is there a number of reasons? Is there an overwhelming reason? And what can we be doing as a council to actually help you to get through that?
It's a really good question, actually, Councillor Chicken. Thank you. I think probably what we need to do is bring you a wider discussion paper to this scrutiny committee to look at that. But I would say the larger majority are about mental health challenges and anxiety, and children not wanting to come back out into busy classrooms, really struggling with anxiety in that level. And actually parents want their children to come to school in the greater majority of cases. So I don't want that to be seen as parents not wanting their children. They do, but they are really struggling. So our work with the ICB and the trust, particularly around how we work with SIPs, is a real challenge. But they are working really well with us to try and do some pilot work in Northumberland and improve those areas. We are fortunate that we have the legacy of the mental health trailblazer in Northumberland, and that's continuing. So actually we built the inclusive education services around supporting in a number of different ways, because clearly there will be children who have very individual circumstances and families with individual circumstances. But clearly, I think that's of greater interest, and Reverend Lennox raised that question earlier. So I would be happy to bring that back as a wider discussion paper, if that would be helpful for scrutiny members.
Yeah. I've just had a chat with Chris there. We're going to timetable something in as a substantive report. But can I bring Paul Rickard in there?
I actually think that'd be really useful. And I also think that it might be really hard to hear, but the actual number that this represents, because we see the percentage, but I think when you see the stark reality of a number of children who aren't back in school, and I say that from own experience, it's quite horrifying. And I'm not saying that about the council, I'm saying that about the real issue that we've got nationally. In terms of the DFE, have they identified an attendance hub for Northumberland? Have they said that there's, or do we have, and I'm sure we have got, some really good examples of heads who are doing something really well, which almost Northumberland could do its own attendance hub? Because I feel sometimes if you wait for the department, the 2 years too late. And I think we can see them now starting to work in Teesside in terms of how that work's being spread out. And I suspect you probably are doing it, but I couldn't see it as much in here. And also linked to what you're talking about is the next step, Chair, almost breaking down what that percentage means in terms of, is it mental health? Are there other factors? Is it finance? Is it poverty? And I know that's sometimes really hard to hear as well, but I do think if we're going to scrutinise the numbers properly, we have to have more information in that way, but I get that takes time and resource.
Thank you. Or did you want to come back on that? Yeah.
Thank you. You won't be surprised to know that, yes, we are doing that. So I think this report is last year, so we've moved on from that stage. Not that we didn't know and understand the challenges last year, but actually knowing and understanding that's not enough. It's what you do about it. So doing our own attendance hub work, there isn't an attendance hub identified in Northumberland, but we do have some areas of good practice, and so working with those head teachers to say, what is it you're getting right, and appreciating that demographics are very different across the county. We have to also consider that. We do know the percentages of children, whether they're less than 50% attendance, less than 60% attendance. So we'll make sure that we're able to detail that into the report for you, and also look at the wider services and how we're using that when we bring back the report.
Dare I ask, Chair, about then the funding that goes with that? Because I think one of the key things that has the impact is if you've got a big enough team to do the work, and most of the successful attendance of the DFE run have people attached to them. Now, DFE don't give the money, the school finds the money for that, but if that's something the local authority can support with, I think that'll have the biggest bit of action.
Leave that with me. Councillor Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So I've got 57 questions for you. No, some of them are comments, and just I think where there's almost some opportunities for us as well. So one of them, I know I've been banging on for what seems like forever about the skills audit within corporate parenting, and using the opportunities and great people that we have across this county, including in the council, because and as I've said before, we have got councillors of all walks of life who bring a lot to the table. Please use them, and use them to their full capacity and ring them out. I just think that opportunity, we should use it. We really should. And I really want to push on that, about that skills audit and actually using them people across the county. I do believe that the risk register, I think it should come to every single one of these meetings for us to have our eyes on, because I think there's more and more issues coming to light. It's constant. It seems there's another crisis on the horizon, whether it be caused by poverty, lack of funding, even staff shortages. And I think it's quite to have that golden thread that runs through these meetings, every single one. We discussed yesterday, and it's mentioned again in here, about the training and recruitment. I know that when we talk about like the Weldon Centre and stuff, I would love for us to have something from the age of 16 to try and make sure people want to work in health, social care, in the care settings, because to be fair, wait until after they've got A levels or they've got a degree. It's too late. Actually, we need to get them at 16 and make them passionate about these services. And I think it's a great opportunity for us. And I think it's really important that we need to push collectively for funding. I also would love to see some more task and finish groups on some of these issues, and for Northumberland to be the leaders. I know I gave Glenn a very hard time in corporate parenting the last time, and I really think that we should be pushing, and it doesn't matter what rosette you've got pinned to your chest. I think this is so important for the young people of Northumberland that we should be having task and finish groups on all these issues that are coming up, and fighting tooth and nail together to get funding to make these changes, and for us to be the leaders, not the followers, or wait until 2 years down the line, and being able, and whether it be attendance, like the fact that people can't afford school uniform, which you know that I'm so passionate about, but I just think we need to be grabbing these things, and these reports are coming a year late, so we're already finding out about issues a year too late anyway. So if that's the starting point, I just think we need to be front and centre and really pushing. And I would love to see us have more staff. I would love to see us have more funding, but I also think we need to use the resources that we have in the county. And please exploit the councillors as much as you like, and wring us dry and use our skills. Thank you.
I'll let Audrey come in, then I'll come back on a couple of things as well.
Thank you. Really good points, all of them. You will be delighted that we've listened to you, and Graham and I will be coming to each of the group meetings shortly. We did the Conservative group yesterday, and you will get a question that has a list on it. I just happen to have it in my book tucked in there today, So it is particular to corporate parenting. We are doing a roadshow. We have, as you know, revisited and revitalised that. And our next step is actually how do we help all of our elected members to understand their responsibility and their role within corporate parenting. So that's absolutely and definitely on the radar. In terms of lots of other things, I won't respond to each individual, but have noted them all down. 16 to 18-year-olds, so for health and social care. So we are really fortunate. We've got a number of different routes, both through our academy routes that we run here, apprenticeships that are run. We also have, remember, the training arm within the council, Northumberland Skills, and they have a healthy offer, health and social care for our young people. And our college in Northumberland has a healthy offer for health and social care, health and social care training in Northumberland. So the bit that we have to do is get more young people to be interested to move into that sector. So we've got the funding, we've got the opportunity to do the training. It's actually the it's helping everybody understand that this is such a worthwhile career. The difference that you can make to a child or a family's life long term is huge if you move into this, and it's a sustainable long-term career. So that's the piece of work, and actually Graham's not only leading that regionally, he's doing some national work around that. So you're right, Northumberland are leading the way. But what we need to do locally is with our schools, help our young people from year 7 onwards to think about this as a career route for them. So definitely open to understand what we could do much more, and how we could use everyone's help and ideas to do much more of that.
And just a few things if I can pick up. Before the meeting today, we had a discussion about the formatting of reports and data dashboards. So many of the reports that you receive here are what you would call historic data. So as you say, there may be a lag in it because it's a statutory annual report. But there is live data we get, and I think there is something about using some of that data dashboard to be presented to us on a regular basis. So that's something we'll pick up afterwards. The other thing which I just wanted to pick up on is in terms of the attendance. I'll speak to Audrey after the meeting, but I think it is something which everybody is concerned about. And rather than waiting months and months for it to schedule into our work programme, I think there's something about maybe even convening a special meeting on that as a standalone topic, but it's got to be on the back of having some of that information. But we'll talk about that afterwards because I think it is a really important point. And the other thing about health and social care is, with another hat on that I have, I'm working with a school in Blythe who is in contact with the local NHS and college about precisely the qualification you're talking about. And of course, thousands and thousands of mini scrubs went out to our primary schools in Northumberland, courtesy of Northumbria NHS Trust, to inspire young people about careers in health and social care. So there is a lot of work being done around that sector, and it would be good, I think, to perhaps capture that so people see it. But you're right, let's pick on the talents of our councillors, because there are many, and use it to support staff. But we'll pick up some of your points afterwards.
Slide 1 done then.
So Reverend Lennox just wanted to drop in, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I always wanted to pick up what I raised it earlier, because I think the whole area of attendance is so wide-ranging, and the reasons for it are so wide-ranging. And it can be sometimes unique to Northumberland. The reason in Northumberland is different from the reason in Newcastle. All kinds of factors. Mental health itself is such a wide area. But I believe it's such a critical problem because of the fact that it affects performance in all kinds of ways. But I like to think it's also tied in with this business of relationships. And, you know, the importance, even in this aspect, of developing the right kind of relationships. And I would support Paul and when he mentioned the fact that there is good practice around, and it's identifying that good practice and trying to find out what that good practice is about so that it can be mirrored elsewhere if need be, or suggested elsewhere. I just wanted to, highlight that it is such a wide-ranging problem. It touches on so many areas.
And I think just before we move on that, I mean, I've brought this up under the social care elements, but one of the strengths, I think, of the restructured department we've got, I mean, obviously this cuts hugely into education and primarily there, but because of the virtual school, which does sit under me, the range of things that we're doing there cuts across and is cross-cutting. But the partnership issue and the response to, for example, attendance, we've done a lot of work with social workers to improve their understanding of the importance of attendance and working with that alongside partners, as well as what the primary focus of social care might be. And equally, if I talk about the early help, the education support that we're putting in through the schools, there's a whole range. It absolutely is a partnership issue in terms of how we deal with, respond to and work most effectively. And I think just finally to reflect on the relationships work, we've had a couple of relationships summits and conferences with education and social care colleagues. There was an inclusion summit back in September, again looking at all those kind of things, but absolutely the importance of working relationships, particularly with young people who might find it harder to attend for a variety of reasons. Absolutely.
Graham, would you like to continue with your presentation?
I've got to slide 2.
Page 2 of the report.
Okay. Okay, just an overview again of some of the strategic leadership stuff. I will just take it across from the left. So in terms of partnerships, over the last year we have effectively integrated our children's safeguarding partnership and our adults safeguarding partnership. So it's now an integrated safeguarding partnership, and I think that does bring potential benefits in terms of learning assurance for those issues that do cross-cut, but I think we've got sufficient focus on adults and children's respectively to make sure we're focusing on those appropriately. And we have put in place scrutiny arrangements. These are required by regulatory guidance that we need to have an independent scrutineer of children's safeguarding partnerships. We've been very, I think, inventive and effective about the arrangements we've put in place, and the model for scrutiny that we've put in place in our partnerships has been recognised by the DFE and is being used and told to other councils to look at what we're doing here. Now, this is early days. We got the partnership integrated for April now. Moving forward, we're in that new structure, but I think we've got much more streamlined, effective and focused partnership structures with independent scrutiny that will help drive, oversee and drive the quality of our practice. And the other element of partnerships for us, our major expense in children's services, our external residential placements cost a fortune, continue to rise. We did a very detailed presentation to corporate parenting a couple of weeks ago, but what we have managed for this year at least to maintain the ICB funding support to the costs of those external placements, and we continue to try and debate that going forward. There might be some more challenges with the ICB in the range of financial challenges they have going forward, but we've managed to maintain it for this year. In terms of national developments, the other bits that we've got to have an eye on what's coming our way. And again, what we've tried to do in Northumberland is contribute where we can to things that are being trialled or piloted to inform national developments. So one of the Pathfinder projects we've been part of, and Dorothy mentioned it earlier, was about data and digital. This is again is part of the Stable Homes report. This is the response, the government response to the Josh McAllister review from previous year about the independent review of children's social care, looking at how that might change and be restructured and look at the future work for that, and that's a long-term plan. And there are pathfinders within that to try and inform how that might look nationally. And the kind of things we've been involved in, the Data and Digital Children's Voices project. We did that with North Side, that the evaluation's just coming out now, but really effective stuff that we've done alongside colleagues in North Tyneside, looking at how we can maximise both the use of digital technology to engage with children, young people and their families, but also the kind of information we can get back which supports that feedback, that loop, how we make sure their voices are front and centre and make sure we maximise and understand from that. So a lot of learning coming out of that I think is very interesting, but it's been good to be part of that. We've also been part of the public law outline. That's the framework that covers care proceedings, basically. And pre-proceedings, care proceedings, covers in that public law outline. We've been part of contributing to looking at what data is collected locally and nationally to inform the effectiveness of the work when we are thinking of or actually going into care proceedings with children and their families. We're also part of a DFE pilot, again linked to the public law outline, where local authorities liaise at an early stage with CAFCAS at the very start of care proceedings. CAFCAS are the Children and Families Court Advisory and Support Service, and they're basically the independent view when we go into care proceedings. They're the independent scrutiny and challenge, acting in the child's best interest to help support and inform the court in the decisions they make. So what we're trying to look at is a pilot where we liaise with them very early and identify where there may be gaps and issues in terms of our evidence, in terms of what we might be looking at, to try and make sure that we get those through the care proceedings thoroughly but in a timely way. And one of the challenges is the timescale and the court capacity for actually getting through care proceedings is a real challenge, which means that we're not getting to the point of being able to make long-term decisions for children in as timely a way as we would like. So we're contributing to that. And we're also, the North East is, I think, one of 2 national pathfinders looking at how we can enhance and recruit more foster carers, basically part of the placement sufficiency issue. So all 12 authorities in the region are participating in that, as are we. It's actually been led by Sunderland, but it really is a collaborative regional effort. So that is just kicking off in September, will be evaluated, will inform longer term things. The workforce, as I say, remains a key area of challenge. We have had obviously some points already made around that, but again, that looks at some of the things that we have been doing and will continue to support our workforce strategy. Particularly around, I'll pick out 2 or 3 things that we have been doing. In terms of teams, the embedding of NEWST, I didn't put the full, we all try not to use acronyms, but the full name is so long. But it's the Northumberland Education, the Emotional Wellbeing and Support Team. That again is funded through the ICB. We've managed to get that in place with us for now over a year. It's been very effective in terms of working and supporting our staff and the teams around our young people, both to understand their emotional support needs and find ways in which we can meet them more effectively. We've also developed a pre-birth team, again, based on the data we've got, where we can pick up young parents who are pregnant at the earliest possible stage where there's a risk of removal, see if we can work very early to make sure we can mitigate that and look at ways of supporting them. But equally, if that isn't to be successful, then we can make the plans for the children at the earliest possible stage in terms of there. And again, the first evaluation is very, very effective. And that's part of our workforce development, but equally is part of our retention, because it gives other opportunities for our staff to try different and more specialist areas of work. So that's part of it as well. And I've talked about the early help education team and family hubs as well as we develop those. Our social work academy, our ASY academy really is the cornerstone of our social work recruitment and retention. Absolutely, without that, we'd be struggling much more than we are now. That's been in place now for 5 years. I know when I do the practice days and other things, the vast majority of our social work workforce have come through that academy, because everybody nationally struggles to recruit experienced social workers in, but the same in teaching in other places. So we've got to grow our own. Our academy is highly rated. We had the Skills for Care, reviewed that in the previous year, very positive about what we're doing. But we continue to evolve that with a view to future early career frameworks, which is coming nationally, but equally making sure that when we transition the team from the social workers from the academy into the teams, that we do that in the most effective way and support them throughout the whole year. So there's a lot of work going on there. We restructured our admin over the last year to make sure they're providing the most effective support for our frontline staff to make sure they can do the job that they want to do without some of the necessary bureaucracy that comes with it. But can we support them in the most effective way there? We have looked also at the use of social work support assistants, where we've looked at ways in which we can use staff who are not social work qualified, might be qualified and experienced in other ways, to do very specific tasks to support the social workers, to make sure we're keeping the support going with the families in a timely way. And we use that, but again, not to replace social workers, it's to work alongside them. The feedback that we get, I've got to say, from the range of mechanisms we get from staff, the staff do feel well supported, do feel they have good access to managers, and that the opportunities for development and learning and tools that they have, we do get very positive feedback. But if we got something that wasn't, we'd want to do something about it, because the workforce are critical for us. And I've got to say, the bottom point is there are challenges, and I don't want to underplay them, but our kind of the data that we've got for where we're at in terms of staff turnover, absence, vacancies and use of agency staff is better than a lot of regional and national, but it doesn't mean it's not a challenge for us. I don't want to underplay the workforce challenges that we do have, particularly in social work, but also in residential care that we've got. And the other element of strategic leadership, we as leaders have got to know, we've got to know our business well and driving it. We've heard from Dorothy today about our quality of practice framework, so I won't cover that anymore. So I'm happy to take questions on any of that before I move on.
Yeah, so Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. Graham, you've mentioned about the ICB, and I do work in for the NHS, so I have dealings with the ICB. So how long is the funding maintained? What's your relationship like with the ICB, and what do you think the biggest impacts will be come the savings or efficiencies that ICB are going through at the moment? Thank you.
Okay, so we've had an agreement over, I think it's for 4 years now, that our predecessor, Kath McAvoy-Carr and myself, we agreed with what was the CCG at the time for that amount of money. That amount of money hasn't changed over the 4 years in terms of the contributions. We have got good working relationships with our local place contact person around that, but I'm equally aware, because I'm involved in regional work as well, that there will need to be a regional view from the ICB about how they support funding consistently across the region. My view for us, I think we're better than some but not as good as others in terms of what we get from the ICB as is currently, but we, Audrey and I, work very hard to make sure we maintain those relationships both locally and regionally to understand the importance of this and to make sure we've got a fair regional approach to it.
Very good question. Councillor Ball.
All right then. When we talk about the region stuff, will devolution have any impact on the funding structure going forward for all the different partners? And one of my concerns as well is regards to some of the funding. It seems very either project specific or short term, which I always fear what happens next. Do we lose staff? Do we lose good schemes that are in place? Because if the money's not there, it's simply how do we even do it? So is there any way that we can either lobby, challenge, so that it's longer term funding, longer term projects with a bit more flexibility for you to be able to do your job and use that money where you see fit? And also with regards to some of the training, I'm just wondering what we do to tackle some of the barriers for people to be able to retrain or excel or climb the career ladder, because traditionally health and social care is a women's role and promoted as, but the number of barriers for women to be able to climb the career ladder, whether it be the funding, childcare, all that kind of stuff, I'm wondering where that fits, because I know you know that I've recently went back to train and I'm shocked at some of the issues around funding, how long it takes to get sorted, and actually people drop out because they need to know that they can feed the kids, there's a roof over their head and so on and so forth. So removing some of them barriers to be able to help people either climb the career ladder in the workforce so they've got that meaningful progression, but also to be able to even just do their job going forwards.
I'll take the funding, particularly in terms of social work recruitment. One of the things we've lobbied for and has got is apprenticeships and using that. And that's we've seen this year coming into our academy for the first time. 5 of our academy who've started in September came through our apprenticeship route. And again, I think, and we keep developing a whole social care approach to this. So I'm going to talk a little bit. So talk about residential care, for example. Now, I think we've developed some very effective. More recently, we had an open day at Pegsworth, and I've got to say, for me when I was there, absolutely fascinated by the demography of the people who came. You know, I was expecting probably young people out of college or university. Actually, we had a lot more people, maybe in their 30s, people looking at a career change and, you know, almost motivated by the moral purpose of doing something well. Now, that is a principle that we would always drive for any of our social care work in terms of that. But we are trying to look across and think across the range of roles that we have, most of which don't need a social work qualification. But if I take those apprenticeships, those 5 people have worked in our family help or our other not social work qualified areas. but have enjoyed what they've been doing and have taken the opportunity to do that. And again, dealing with the issue, the apprenticeship gives sufficient for them not to have a significant drop in standard of living, the other things that we can do with that. And we want to try and develop more of those, but again, we need national support to do that. So we're looking at a range of creative ways in terms of how far back we go and how we can widen the pool of people who might be interested in social care broadly, or then holding that down to opportunities for social work specifically. And again, we will have people who've come out of residential care who want to go into social works. It might suit the lifestyle better, be something different, and they can develop. So we are thinking across the whole range of ways of engaging people in social care. It's probably a separate question around funding streams, particularly so, for example, family help and family hub funding. There's a range of funding streams coming into our family helps. There's family hubs, there's supporting families, and there's reducing parental conflict funding, which our feedback nationally is we need that to be more coordinated and undertaken better. But again, it is time limited. So, you know, a fair percentage of our family help stuff is through grant funding, but a lot of it is through council as well. But again, that's what we've got and trying to manage. And we do try and use really creatively the funding we get to actually innovate and develop. And I think that's some of the work we've done with family hubs has evidenced that and is seen to be doing that nationally.
Got Councillor Chicken who wishes to speak as well.
Again, just off the back of what Caroline said there about recruiting and having a career path within social care. I love the idea that we've got an apprenticeship type scheme and that we've got these academies. When I was at school, it was only girls who did health and social care, and it was seen as that was the subject for the girls that were too thick to do academia. That's what it was presented as. And it was kind of pushed in, oh, you're the girls that aren't academic, you're not going to have a career path. You will leave school and most likely have children or work in a nursery nurse. We need to change that outlook, because a lot of the parents of today that have their teenagers that are potentially going to go into health and social care still have that mindset. They still think that's just for the children, particularly the girls, that are not academic and won't make it into another career. They have that mindset. It's ingrained because that's the way it's been for so many decades, certainly while they were at school. Perhaps we need to work a little closer with the national curriculum side of things and change the health and social care at GCSE and at A-level. And then we can sort of change the environment and especially bringing more males into it and actually present it as something that is a viable career, as Caroline says, and that it's not just for girls, and maybe just changing that language a little bit, but working a bit more closely with that at a lower level so that it's deep rooted in. It's not just something that somebody thinks about at maybe, I don't know, you know, later on in life when they realise that's their passion, their thing. They can do that from a very young age and have it ingrained so that we can dispel that myth of what it actually is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Chicken. Couple of things to pick up on. So I'm hugely passionate about the influences of young people and where their own perceptions lie. And quite often today I will talk to head teachers or actually anybody who will listen, but particularly about not just parents, about grandparents. We know, for example, so many grandparents do childcare today, much more than they perhaps previously have done. And if I go back to my previous career, based in North Tyneside, you know, the engineering industry is desperate for engineers. We could produce them forever. But actually, grandparents were really influential in saying, don't go into there, there's no jobs there. And that was because their legacy was the shipyards, and so that they'd gone through that. So I am really passionate about that influential approach for parents, grandparents, and teachers who may have just gone an academic route through A-levels, university, and back into teaching. So that connection with industry and education, and this committee will have heard some of the work that we've done in Northumberland, really innovative, really different. But we'll continue to do much more of that, there is no doubt about it. The National Occupational Standards for Health and Social Care, do balance all of that opportunity and gender, and it is there at post 16, and whether that's at a GCSE or at an A-level or a BTEC perspective now. So it is much more balanced, and particularly where schools have the careers expectation. You know, many schools operate through the Gatsby benchmarks. You know, it is a requirement of schools to undertake that career guidance. So that work we're doing, working with schools, we are fortunate to be able to use North of Tyne, and also the LEP, the Local Enterprise Partnership, and their enterprise advisors. That's used really well around Northumberland and across the region, actually. So trying to neutralise, I think, is probably the most appropriate. Some of those potentially long-held perceptions is a big piece of work. If I could just come back to Councillor Ball as well, just around NEMCA, because I'd written that one down and thinking about the devolution deal. So we're currently with North of Tyne, if you like, we're a significant part of that. And the opportunities that come with that money is above and beyond what we already have. So we are, particularly in education, there's been a lot of chances and opportunities, and we've taken those. Number of projects around poverty, around leadership. We've got a brilliant programme currently being funded around inclusion for our head teachers. So some really good work there. And in fact, Councillor Daly was heavily involved in that work in the first instance. We are now in the position of helping to support and shape what the NEMCA may become and what that looks like. And again, it's about building on what already exists in the constituent local authorities and their statutory responsibilities. The additional funding that comes at local level is about how they can enhance, develop, you know, make better, narrow gaps even more. And we're already talking about what the gaps could be. One of the areas that we're talking about is the growing up well. How do we help children so much earlier, so much younger? And it's really key that social care is seen a part of that. And it's not just seen as education. So it has to be joined up. And the way that we're looking at children's services here in Northumberland is about saying, so actually, what do we do together much earlier, much sooner? And we need to make sure that we help everybody else understand that, particularly around the new devolution opportunities.
Good point. There's also quite a lot of work being done, as Audrey said, around the combined authority currently, because I sit on the Inclusive Growth Board. I know, Audrey, you attend those meetings. It might be useful, Chris, if perhaps we could, because some of their reports are quite good, it might just be worthwhile just sharing those. There's particularly the work around inequalities and supporting at an early stage, and just share them with members, because there is a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes we're guilty of not seeing the big picture. So a lot of people are within the big picture, but often that isn't conveyed to everyone. So I think we'll get some of those reports sent out just as an FYI. Right, Graham.
Okay, I'll just come. Sorry, I'm just going.
There was just one key metric I think you need to celebrate, though, Graham, in this, that better than national average for staff turnover, absence, vacancies and use of agency staff. The percentage is huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of national average is 17.6%, down to 6.2% for agency staff, which surely means the funding goes back into your own as opposed to anywhere else.
Yeah.
I just think that's really important that that's heard at the next stage,
Yeah.
as opposed to being lost in a slide. So I'll have something to celebrate.
And I partially picked that up yesterday at full council because of our social work academy. So we're not spending huge amounts of money chucking them at agencies, and we're actually growing our own model, which I think is what Graham was going to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely that. I mean, that's the whole point of it. And I think I was just going to come back on the gender split, actually, in terms of across the region for social work, it's something like 86% are women in frontline social work. And I do lead on some regional work as well. We're looking to try and dispel some of the myths around that. But equally, I do think for social work particularly, it does need a national drive. And that's one of the things the DCSs are driving with the DFE nationally in terms of recruitment around social work. I think it needs a national push. We've seen it with teachers, we'll see it with health staff, but I think social work does, because it's not well understood and has got a lot of stigma attached to it, and I think it needs to happen at every level if we're going to support improving the recruitment and retention there. With that, I'll move on to slide number 3. Okay, just briefly again, I've structured this against what is the Ofsted framework and the different areas of Ofsted framework. So just around help and protection, the work that's done around the early help and prevention elements of that. We had a youth justice inspection that came in April. Overall judgment of good, with 3 areas within that being judged outstanding. And some of the stats there about lower numbers of entrants into the criminal justice system, lower rates of reoffending with far fewer numbers of children. So again, some positive data and information supporting some of the qualitative work we've done. But again, for us, when we get inspected, whilst there's obviously some anxiety about the judgment, actually the narrative and the fact we have external scrutiny, we want to use that positively to drive improvements. So there will be areas that they did make some recommendations which we will be using to drive forward our work around that, but overall a very positive view of our work in youth justice around that. In terms of early and family help, I've talked a lot about the family hub developments, but just some of the key data, a very high percentage, I think it's 74% off the top of my head, of successful outcomes in terms of when we're working with families on a casework basis in early help. And actually the numbers that step up from early and family help up into statutory social work are very low and actually reducing. And I have said this before, but I've got to say the quality of our early help and our family hub offer is one of the key reasons that we in Northumberland didn't get hugely overwhelmed as we were coming out of the pandemic, as much as some other areas that didn't have that level of provision to pick up at an earlier stage, and that continues to be crucial for us. The most important thing is about meeting children and families' needs at the earliest possible point in the opportunity, and that's the point of it. But equally, in terms of protecting already overstretched statutory functions, it's crucial for us, and I think we've got some very good data and information and quality of practice here about our early help, our family help support. Again, from the quality of practice framework and the approach we use, we do see really child-centred practice, creative ways of engaging, really effective family engagement wider. Again, positive feedback we receive from families about our early help provision. We've seen one of the indicators is about improved sustained engagement with children's centres through family hubs through our most deprived areas. And I've talked about the early help assessment team, again, supporting schools in education to identify children and people who might need support earlier, but also supporting them to do early help assessments rather than being local authority led. The principle of early help assessments, anybody can do those who are engaged, who might be the key person with that family. And we can here see that we've increased significantly over the target. We thought 200, actually 420 over the year, led by our education colleagues, which I think is really important to make sure that that partnership working is undertaken effectively and by the right people for the child and the family.
Graham, I think what we should do is run through your slides, because I know how many you've got left. Right?
I'll keep going.
Can we just run through the slides and then we'll take questions?
It's good to have the
And
interest.
we'll book afternoon tea at about 5 for every week.
Yeah. Okay. The next element really is about our social work practice. I won't go through it, but again, front door, which is crucial for us, the whole range of practice and processes to make sure that we receive all the contacts, make sure they're directed in the right direction, where we can get early help and universal services to do it absolutely fine. But when they do need to go into social work at whatever level, we know that the application of those respective thresholds is effective, and actually that supports children and families to receive the right support at the right time. We have seen the numbers on child protection plans are higher than the NAFRA average. Whenever we do that, as I say, just going back to an earlier discussion, if we see trends that are out with what would be seen nationally or with stat neighbours, we will do qualitative work. And I've got to say what we see is the decision making on that work is right, that the decision to go to conference was right when they're coming off those plans, in the vast majority of cases that is fair and defensible. So actually, whilst the numbers are high in the national average, the quality of practice shows that I think children are being protected appropriately and effectively. Again, quality work, our social work, as our early help and our range of staff, absolutely passionate about it. Know children and young people well, really creative in terms of how they engage with them, creative use of tools, range of ways in which they gain their experiences and work with them. One of the key elements, though, is about wider family members and networks. So we're not just working with the child in isolation, not just working with the parents and the child in isolation, but in the terms of their family, their support and their networks. Again, this is nationally being pushed, and rightly so, that we maximise the support and people who know and work with the family well, and we can see that we're doing that positive. That is part of the signs of safety model in terms of working with networks. We see that effectively. When I come onto it and we see some of the young people that exit care, I think our early work identifying key family members and networks who know the child is crucial in that. I'll touch on the return home interviews. This is where children go missing who may be at risk. So what we've done, we've taken the return home interviews in-house. They're undertaken by our Northumberland Adolescent Service, and actually the percentage that have been accepted by young people who've gone missing, who probably by definition aren't that easy to engage with, the 80% acceptance of and undertaking of that return home interview, I think is really impressive, and make sure we are trying to engage some of what may be our most vulnerable young people. So that's been a very positive move in-house, and to use those processes to help identify young people at risk and support them. Again, we do also see, and it is a feature in Northumberland, I have to say, a very good multi-agency working in a range of areas of practice. We do see that both within our work within social care, but across our partnership working. But as ever, there are areas we can improve on: timeliness of some of our assessments, the consistency about the quality of our plans, so people understand what they're doing, when they need to be doing them, who's doing them. We can make sure they're more consistent. We've already talked about school attendance. And also just picking up on consistency of case supervision recording. Crucial is the management oversight. Again, we've talked about that quality of practice. But when we're supporting staff in relationship-based work, how well we support them to reflect on the work, think about it, and support them to make sure they're progressing the plan. We just need the consistency of evidencing that to be recorded more in our sessions. So we're working on that, and I think we're already seeing some improvements in that. Sorry, wrong way. And then for cared for children, again, I use that language just because one of the things that our young people have talked through, and I think some of you will have seen the video that our young people have done talking about the use of language. And even if we talk about children looked after, that is a legal term, but a number of our children would rather be called cared for as opposed to looked after, because if you have the acronym a looked after child, LAC, it's a deficit kind of thing. So just things we might never think about. There's a lot of work ongoing around this, but that's why I'm talking about children cared for as opposed to looked after there. We had an Ofsted focused visit in July last year about how effectively we achieve permanence for our cared for children. Again, the vast majority of the findings there were positive. We plan, identify the need early, plan for it well, and actually achieve permanence. You know, that's the long-term placement, wherever that might be for our young people, in a timely way for the vast majority of them. Again, there's some data under there about we have the lowest rate of children cared for in the North East compared to our comparators. We have more children who return home from care than comparators, but equally and critically importantly, the percentage of young people who return to care is very low, and low comparatively. I mean, generally, whilst it might differ from quarter to quarter over a year, we might be talking about something like between 3 and 5% of those numbers, so very small numbers as well, the percentages there. Maintain the quality of our exiting care, those that leave care for adoption, those that leave care, particularly for special guardianship orders. And again, that will link into our work identifying the network of key people who are important to the child. If we get to the point in care proceedings, particularly where we don't think, and the court agree it's not safe for that child to return to the birth parents, we will look for people who are already known to that, who might be able to provide the long-term care. One of the methods of legally underpinning that is special guardianship. And again, our numbers who exit through that route are higher than comparators. So again, a positive view of the work. Quality of in-house residential care has been maintained, if you take that by the Ofsted judgments that they have. We've increased our in-house fostering capacity and implemented a particular model to trial, which is seen nationally to be an effective way of working. Outside of here, I can talk more about that. Again, I'm proud of the fact that 74% of our children who are cared for are placed within a 20-mile radius of the family home. That's a national indicator. Given our rurality and our challenge, that we get to that percentage, which is better than national percentage, I think is good. Again, we'd want young people, the vast majority to stay near to their home. Occasionally, we may need to place away for reasons of safety, but the vast majority would want to do that. And again, high quality direct work with our cared for children. So again, just a bit more on the cared for. We have positive working relations with CAS and the district judge, which I won't go in much further. I've talked already about the pilot that we're doing. The virtual school, again, we've talked a lot about that, but again, that just lists, and it's information there about where the strengths are, but again, areas of work that we need to improve on in terms of our cared for children and their academic progress and achievements. Again, we've got information there about how well we're doing in terms of making sure our cared for children, their health needs are met. And we have particularly, for example, we're all acutely aware of the struggles around dental capacity, but we have done work with colleagues in health to make sure our cared for children do get their dental health needs met. And we've made very specific arrangements where we've had to do that to make sure that happens for them. But again, then just the bottom area, areas for improvement or challenges, placement sufficiency and stability. We have too many of our children move too often between placements for a whole range of reasons, which we do know about. We're doing a deep dive on that, but we do want to improve that and the volume of and the amount of placements available. Again, these are national challenges. Costs of external placements are a national challenge. They're the biggest drain on children's social care budgets. Again, we've had a look at that in detail at corporate parenting recently. And the timeliness of adoption, we're out with timescales, but I've got to say for that, the children we place for adoption are some of those who would be hard to place. Either older children, sibling groups, special needs, does take longer. So I'm less worried about that, but it's something we'd want to still get them there more quickly. So, care leavers, this is now, it has been previously, but it's now a specific area of focus. Come the next inspection, they will be looking at our care leavers very specifically in terms of that. And again, I think we've got a very good offer and support for those. I probably won't read all those out. That just lists some of the services that we have for our care leavers in terms of support for them, in terms of accommodation, in terms of support them from the services or for leaving care workers. And again, our performance indicators, I think, again, are very positive. There's a national indicators about keeping in touch with. And again, we're at very high, 98%. How many of our young people stay put? That's when they reach the age of 18. Can they stay with their foster carers beyond 18? And again, we'd want more of that, although that does then impact on our sufficiency for other children come into the placement, but that's the right thing for them, and who wouldn't? You know, who moves out at 18? And then again, those in suitable accommodation, very high percentage of our children and young people who have left care or care experienced in accommodation. So again, the areas of improvement that we'd want, again, eat. We'd want to improve how our young people are meeting education, employment and training, and also just further alignment, and that work is already going about aligning academic and vocational pathways for Year 11 pupils with the pathway plan. The pathway plan is a wider planning mechanism by which we engage with young people to look at their plans with them, and we just need to align that better in terms of across to that. So that's the range of care leavers. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. The next 4 slides, I won't go through in detail, but just to touch on, these are our proven priorities. So when I talked at the start, what do we need to do to support continuous improvement? And we've lifted those and categorised those into 4 areas of improvement priority going forward. So there's the ones for strategic leadership. A lot of them I've touched on when I've gone through that. That just gives an idea of the things we will be looking at under strategic leadership. The next one is workforce remains a priority for us. Again, some of those actions that we have in place around how we're going to continue prioritising and developing workforce, because that's an improvement area for us. Similarly, about sufficiency, stability and support. Again, a range of actions. Again, we've touched on a lot of those, but again, they'll be in the report for if you want some more questions on that. And then finally, the actual social care practice itself. Obviously, that's an area for continuous improvement. Again, I've listed some of the things that we talked about there. So those are our priorities going forward. So we've categorised the need, and that informs our continuous improvement plan. Thank you.
Brilliant, Graham. We'll have a drink now. So, questions?
Okay.
Caroline.
Right then, you know how much I believe in youth work practice, and I still will bang the drum for Northumberland County Council to have a team of youth workers that work for us and in partnership with other people in the community and voluntary sector. But it shouldn't be constantly referred to services. I think we need that soft touch. Actually, it got mentioned yesterday that there isn't a place for youth clubs and pool tables and stuff. There is, because that is the front line of identification of so many other issues. So I would bang the drum for supporting that we find some money from somewhere, or if it is a trial, to prove how valuable the youth service was and is for the children and young people of Northumberland. And it's beyond, as I say, it's great. The work that you guys do, you are second to none in the country, and I'm so proud of the team that we have here. But I think that we haven't got youth workers working with our schools. We haven't got that engagement level, and I just think it's tragic, because I think that there's so many young people that are falling through the net. And if we can find a way, whether we've all got to go on a march from here to London and beg for the money, I just think it is such an important thing. And there's got to be something that we can do to get away from, like, the stuff that we do. The referred services and the interventions are great, but I do think there's a place for youth work and youth clubs, and that soft touch approach to, actually, are you all right? Are you being fed? Because so many things can't get picked up if you're not in the system. And I think there's something that we really need to celebrate the importance of youth work.
Graham, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with the importance of that. I think the provision that we're talking about needs to be in partnership. I absolutely believe that, and I think the model that we've developed here in Northumberland, I think will work well going forward, and absolutely see the importance of youth clubs, youth provision, but I think how the most effective way of them being supported both financially and otherwise may not be through the council, but that's part of partnership working. But what we have got, so part of the Family Hub work, we've developed a mapping of provision across the county, you know, on a range of different levels, something like 387 elements of provision for young people across the county, with local areas for that. But what we have developed, and I think is right for moving forward with the family hubs, what we've developed is what we're calling young people support workers, because I think the youth provision or the youth club provision needs to be seen in the context of the community and the context of young people's families. And if we're going to support young people in the best way possible, we've got to understand the context in which they're working. Absolutely, that provision is crucial for them, for which they enjoy. But there may be other elements of their life that we need to support them on. So that might be targeted work with their family. That might be the support of other provisions. And I think what we've got with the young people support workers, which we're trialling, we're seeing how that works. I think the ability to do work flexibly, to support the provision, but to make the links for young people and the families with provision that might be right for them, and that we can do that flexibly. But that provision of a youth offer is a partnership offer. And I've got to say, some great skills and provision through our voluntary and community sector for that. And I've got to say, there are more funding opportunities there to support that as well. So for me, the model that we are developing here, with some of the challenges that we definitely have had, is that we have maintained the vast majority of the provision that we've had that could have ceased. The vast majority of that has been maintained. The very small number that haven't, we are looking at ways of supporting that through either our young people support workers or other mechanisms. But I think the importance of working across the community and with families is the bit for us to make sure we've got joined up approaches for our young people, and it's not seen as something separate for them, because I think that's the best way of doing it. And I get the point. I mean, I have been a youth and community worker in a very long time and in a past life, and that provision is crucial. But for me, I think strategically, it's about us working in partnership and all together, and making sure how we link together effectively and provide where there are gaps. And part of the consultation of family hubs at the minute is talking to young people in the various localities, is talking to families about why do you struggle to access the provision that there is, and where are the gaps. And I think we can keep evolving those, meeting those gaps that are identified if we do that in partnership.
And just to add to that, what I've actually arranged is an all-member briefing in January about that holistic approach, which Graham's just referred to there, because we've got to see things with that golden thread that you referred to earlier. So that we'll be putting the date out for that in January. So, Councillor Watson.
So I'm very passionate like Caroline, and Caroline's brought me along on her journey of knowing youth services, and I'm getting to know the youth services in my area. Now, one of the things I would say is I have two young, well, 18-year-old and a 12-year-old. I certainly haven't been consulted on any kind of youth services, so I disagree with some of the comments that were made yesterday. I also disagree on the consultation that happened with the youth services with regards to the small, I know there were a small team that were made redundant, so that consultation certainly didn't happen in the Blythe Youth Service, and they're very upset that they weren't consulted upon. Now, it wasn't their youth workers that lost their jobs, but it still has an overall impact on the services that they offer. And also, there's no funding for them from NCC. There's been no funding come forward. So they are flying solo at the moment and feel very out of the loop of everything. So I really, really would push that you speak to these youth services that are doing amazing jobs in my town in Blythe. But I would also like to see what happened before the pandemic, because we had really excellent youth groups around the county. Now, they were massively affected by the pandemic and massively reduced, and that didn't come back the way that it was. So when we're told some of the figures yesterday, I believe some of those were from post-pandemic, and the reason that you only had perhaps 3 children in a youth service, but that youth service was thriving beforehand. And I would really like to see some information on what was provided before, where those children are now, and what we're doing going forward, because I'm passionate like Caroline that I don't think we're doing enough for youth services in the county. Thank you.
I think because there's quite a lot of what I would call operational questions there, which probably isn't the best suited place for this. So what I think would be helpful is perhaps if Graham and Audrey can have a chat with you about your specific area of Blythe. But what I would say, just on a contextual level, putting my Cramlington hat on, Councillor Swinburne's here as well. In Cramlington, we have a youth and community team as a town council, which works with the county council as well. We have seen an explosion of community groups since COVID, since the restrictions have gone, to the extent now where we are having constant showcases. So I think there's a lot of support groups out there, third sector organisations, voluntary, statutory, who are doing amazing jobs, and sometimes we just don't know about them. And there may be, I totally appreciate individual circumstances in certain areas that we need to look at. But I think, Graham, you'd be happy to pick this up with Councillor Watson after the meeting, and then we'll have a look at that for you and pick. And that'll be an opportunity to have a look at that big picture, and hopefully by then some of your local issues that you've identified there, we can have picked some of those up in advance of that meeting. So is that all right? And I think right, okay, unless you wanted to add anything to that?
Sorry, it was just about making that linking in the network of the provision. I think is one of the key things. And Thriving Together, Leading Link, and North East Youth Alliance are working together to make sure we've got those links and the supports across the whole range of the sector there across the county. So I think that's work that is in progress to make sure, you know, and there'll be benefits, I'm sure, for, you know, that those networks to be further developed, enhanced, and the mutual support that might come from that, as well as being able to link across to other provision in the locality for young people.
Any other questions? Councillor Swinburne? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Not so much a question, but I've been on this committee for a number of years now, and I know, as you've said, this is a statutory report. And it covers many of the reports that come to this committee, and as you said, it's taken a step back. And it's right that you take a step back, because sometimes you can be so involved with the work that you can't see what's going on, so you have to remove yourself from that. And today we've seen a number of suggestions, which, you know, we're going to take forward from that. And I know Councillor Ball, you said about councillors becoming involved, and previously I know I've taken from this some reports and some stuff to my LAC and to the LAC Chairs group, which has been shared, and I'm not sure if that's been shared in other LACs, but it's picking up on stuff that needs to be taken back to other members and to members of the public. So if it's not gone to your LAC, maybe pick that up with your LAC chair. So, you know, I can't comment on that. You've mentioned, as you've gone through, about the changes that you've made and adapting to new things that have come on board. And I think you've undersold yourself a bit, although you did comment on it slightly, as to when the pandemic came along, and that wasn't just a slight change, that was, you know, significant. And as he commented, quite rightly, some other authorities were not quite as well set up to cope with that as we were, and it's hats off to everybody involved that we were able to cope with such a significant change. We've mentioned time and time again about our social work academy, and you know, it's such an excellent thing that we've had set up, and we've benefited significantly from there. But I can't help but think, what other areas within the council, within this area or within the council, or connected to, could benefit from such a similar programme or setup, that we really need to give it a kick and say, look, you need to replicate this to get our own in-house setup with that type of academy in that area, in that area, in that area, and why they're not looking at what you've got set up here to say that works, and why they're not copying it elsewhere. You know, we've had it going a few years now, and why are they not looking at it and copying it? Because we know that there's issues in other areas where we can't get the staff, so why are we not replicating it in-house elsewhere? Within your report, there's various areas where you've got comments, which is feedback, and that's invaluable to see in bold writing there, those bits of feedback, and I really value that. That's great to see there. But one thing I really wanted people to look at, and it's in your introduction. It's not the bit where you've just pointed out that you'd be made director, but, you know, great for that. So we're going about school attendance, about social care, placements, etc. And that's the now, okay? And that's, you know, what we do, what everyone does, the decisions that we make, the work done by everyone, and it's all about trying to get, you know, the best for now. But it's the second paragraph, second line, and it's the focus so that they get the best out of life. And I've said this time and time again. What we do, what you do now, and what everybody involved does now, is to try and get the best future for the children. And that's what I wanted to point out, that it's not just about, you know, making those decisions and doing the work now. It's to get the best future for the children. And I think I'm really pleased you put that in there, to get the best out of life, because that is what it's all about, and that's why we do it. Thanks, Chair.
So I think the question in there was that you're just wondering what it is that other areas of this local authority can look at from a directorate which has gone through a transition from having an opportunity to improve to have improved massively. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yes, Chair.
I'm sure you talk to your colleagues in the directorates, and there's lots of learning.
I'm sure just that model, for example, adult social care are operating that academy model, because they'll have similar challenges in adult social care. Certainly would be one that I would know about since we work across.
Thank you, Councillor Swinburne. It's a key focus for our culture and workforce work stream, particularly as part of the BEST programme. But actually we've got a new head of organisational development that will be joining us, and I'm sure they'll take the opportunity to look at what works well across the organisation and share good practice.
Any other questions? No. So I've just got I've got one. So in your report, which is I think it is on 1.3, and it says the opening sentence is the inability to progress another children's home has impacted on Northumberland, currently being able to increase capacity for care of children within the county. So I think what you're saying there is because you're unable to get the extra homes, you've had to use a different model, which you've alluded to in this report. So I suppose the question is, do you still want more children's homes?
I think we need to put into place this model that we're developing around satellite units. That should make registration with Ofsted less time consuming with an existing provision. I think we need to test how it works in that, because I think we're one of the, I don't know any other local authority that's operating this model. I know that some private providers nationally have tried this, but I think we need to see how this works in terms of that. The challenge again is making sure we've got sufficient staff recruited into residential to be able to make sure we've got it. And I think we have got that with our residential. I think we need to test that. Then I think we need to see if that model works, and if we then want more in-house provision, we can base it on the model that's most effective, knowing the need that is being met externally to us.
And we will obviously get a report on how this model is working brought to us. So, on the basis that I don't think there are any further questions, we've been asked to identify areas of scrutiny, which I think we've done, and I think we've also had quite a detailed discussion around the findings of the report. So on that basis, happy to adopt that report. Thank you very much for that, Graham. Just moving on to the remainder of the agenda. So Chris, you're going to cover off the forward plan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on the Cabinet forward plan, which shows the decisions that Cabinet have made and will be making. I don't think there's anything on there that should come to this committee, so that is just to note. Which brings me on to the work programme. There is an additional meeting now in for the 7th of December. That wasn't in originally, and we put that in just to deal with some of the workload that's coming this way. And because January is a joint meeting with the Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee, so that would have meant that there had been nearly 5 months between this meeting and the next sole facts meeting. So we've put an extra one in for December, and that'll be on the 7th of December, and that'll look at the Complaints Annual Report, as we mentioned earlier, and the Director of Education's Annual Report. And then the 9th of January will be that joint meeting with the Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny to look at 3 reports that sort of come across both sets of terms of reference. And that is the 9th of January, which is a Tuesday, so it's on the day of health. So it's just worth noting that. But I will take away the reports that we've talked about today around attendance and risk registers and update the work programme based on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I've not had any indications of any urgent business, so thank you very much for a really informative meeting. Thanks to officers as well. And we'll see you on 7th of December.